Back during slavery, when black people like me talked to the slaves, they didn't kill him. They'd send some old house Negro along behind him to undo what he said.
But let me say this. The notion that white cops are out there just killing black people, that's ridiculous. It's just flat out ridiculous. And I challenge any black person to try to make that point. This notion that cops are actually awesome. You know, they're the only thing in the ghetto from between this place being the Wild Wild West. So this notion that cops are out there just killing black men is ridiculous. And I hate that narrative coming out of this entire situation.
You have to read the history of slavery to understand this. There were two kinds of Negroes. There was that old house Negro and the field Negro. And the house Negro always looked out for his master. When the field Negroes got too much out of line, he held them back in check. He put them back on the plantation.
What about the case? We're waiting for the results to come down from the grand jury for Eric Garner here in New York, right? I mean, it's one thing in Ferguson, there's some audio, but you see the video, you see these cops surround him,
yes.
And he ultimately, it was a homicide. He dies.
I don't think that was a homicide. I don't think that was a homicide. I think
what was that? It was a chokehold. You see it.
Well, I think the cops were trying to arrest him, and they got a little aggressive. I think excessive force, something like that. But to go right to murder, when the cops are trying to arrest you, if you fight back, things go wrong. That doesn't mean, I don't think they were trying to kill Mr. Garner. You know, he was a big man, and they tried to get him down.
The house Negro could afford to do that because he lived better than the field Negro. He ate better, he dressed better, and he lived in a better house. He lived right up next to his master in the attic or the basement. He ate the same food his master ate and wore his same clothes. And he could talk just like his master, good diction. And he loved his master more than his master loved himself. That's why he didn't want his master hurt. If the master got sick, he'd say, "What's the matter, boss? We sick?" When the master's house caught a fire, he'd try and put the fire out. He didn't want his master's house burned. He never wanted his master's property threatened. And he was more defensive of it than the master was. That was the house Negro.
You know, I'm hearing so much from different people, friends, people who come on my show, African Americans saying, listen, Brooke, you know, I was taught it as a young age. I have different rules than you do when I deal with police. And there's a lot of getting that off people's chests right now because of what happened in Ferguson. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration. What can we as a country do with this energy right now?
Well, first of all, we can open a dialogue, and I think that's probably what I did was open a dialogue. Brooke, in fairness, there's some black people out there who are crooks. And when the police come to your neighborhood, it's a tense situation. The only time you interact with the cops is when things are going wrong. That's the only time we ever interact with the cops. But first of all, we as black people, we got a lot of crooks. We can't just wait until something like this happens. And we have to look ourselves in the mirror. There's a reason they racially profile us at times. Sometimes it's wrong, but sometimes it's right. So to act and sit there and act like we hold no responsibility for some of this stuff, it's disingenuous.
But then you had some field Negroes who lived in huts, had nothing to lose. They wore the worst kind of clothes, they ate the worst food, and they caught hell. They felt the sting of the lash. They hated their master. Oh yes, they did. If the master got sick, they prayed that the master died. If the master's house caught a fire, they prayed for a strong wind to come along. This was the difference between the two. And today you still have house Negroes and field Negroes. I'm a field Negro.